All right, welcome back. Now on this stream, I want to deal with violence among Black Americans, foundational Black Americans, or the Native Americans, whatever you want to call us. I want to talk about the violence. You know how everybody's talking about how violent Black Americans are. Everybody got something to say about how violent we are. I just want to, clarify my position on all of this. Now, like I said before, there are several Black men from the inner city, from the hoods, from the projects, who make it out and become productive members of society. This actually happens all the time. If you were to go to Chicago and talk to the gang members, many of them would tell you stories about somebody they knew who lived a square life, who went on to college, who went on to get a good job, and they did not get caught up in the street life like that. It happens all the time. That's just what it is. So, the Black men out here who are advocates for productive Black men and who speak against the Pookies, just keep in mind, many of those Pookies turn against their environment. They don't turn out to be what their peers turn out to be. In Chicago, they call them neutrons. Right? Neutrons. And they still call them neutrons. They called them neutrons back in the mid-90s when I went to school with people from Chicago. And speaking on Chicago in particular, those dudes are they're different. As soon as I got around them, they were country. There was real country, and they had their own dances and their own music. It was like a lot of them didn't even really relate to mainstream or industry music. They heard it, but like when they came to the Job Corps, they had their own DVDs. You know what I'm saying? They had their own music, and it was their own local music, and their music was tied to their set, to their gangs, and they had their own dances. Like I said, they listened to a lot of that house music, and when they started listening to house music, boy, they started doing these dances. Let me just say that we wasn't doing here in Northwest Ohio. The same is true in Michigan, up there, Detroit, Pontiac, Michigan. Anybody from up in that area know they, at least in the 90s, they had a dance called the JIT, right? The JIT, J-I-T. And you see that all across the United States. You go to different parts of the country, you'll find different slangs, different dances, and whatnot. So Chicago's different. It's a different culture. It has the second most population of Black people in the United States. The first, of course, is New York City with about 1.9 million. And Chicago, it's like 900,000. I know it's more than that because a lot of people are just undocumented. But even though it has the second largest population, Black population in the United States, they have the most, and it's by far, gangs. They have the most gangs, they have the widest variety of gangs, and it's really kind of crazy. Because this was the case even back in the 90s. Everywhere else, it was like two gangs, Bloods and Crips. But in Chicago, you had all kind of stuff. You had Black P-Stones, Vice Lords, BDs, GDs, right? And there's even more now. And on top of all that, they have their different sets now that they honor even more than their act, their organization. But you see the thumbnail, let's get right into it. FBA fighting demons. The older I get, the more receptive I am to like people's energy. And with Black Americans, in my opinion, they're dealing with a lot of demons. They're dealing with a lot of demons. And I believe that it originated with white demonic slave masters. Hold on one second. Like I said before, prior to the institution, I guess if you want to call it, of slavery, the Europeans first conjured up the mentality to carry out slavery. They didn't just wake up one day and say, let's enslave a bunch of Negroes. They had to go several months, maybe even years, psyching themselves up, getting in the mindset to do something this inhumane. They had to conjure up the mentality, the propaganda, like, hey, these people are not even real humans, they're savages, they're not fully developed humans, so it's okay. You know, this was even done through the church. It's like, hey, this is not God's people. These are the people that the Bible refers to as the animals, the wild animals of the land that were created before Adam, and that Adam was the first real human being, and that the Negroes were created before Adam, and we as white people, we came from Adam. Blacks are pre-Adamites. They came up with all this stuff. Propaganda and attitudes. The propaganda fueled the attitudes, fueled the perspectives, you see. And that, all of that fueled an energy inside of them of really pure hatred. And it conjured up demons that they went on to act on. And they carried out, and you understand, they had to maintain these demons. They had to reinforce these demons throughout the period of slavery in order for the slave system to continue on. They had to constantly renew their propaganda, refresh their demons, recharge their demons. And if you look at history, there were, there were changes all throughout the slave period. Now you got to detach yourself emotionally from the slave experience and look at it as a massive psyop, because that's partly what it was. That's simultaneously what it was. You have to understand that in living conditions like that, not only do the slave masters have to believe in this propaganda and carry this energy, this demon, the goal is to get the slaves themselves to believe it. Get the slaves themselves to believe that they were inferior and that their rightful place on this earth was as slaves to the superior race. And, you know, they would literally hammer this into their head, whether directly, indirectly, consciously, or subconsciously. You are less than. You are not even fully human. You're inferior. And all that was reinforced with resources and with violence. It was even reinforced sexually. That is how they instilled the demons into Black Americans. And after Black Americans were freed, guess what? They still had those demons inside them. So, they're free, but they function like regular people. 85% of them are married. They're very productive. The men are building cities all across the country. They're more productive than us. But yet, there was still a lot of hatred and evil going on in Black America, even back then. Much of it was in the form of whites continuing to attack Black Americans. The reinforcement of blacks as inferior continued after slavery. Lynchings, the constant destroying of cities, terrorizing the Black American population, filling them full of trauma, so on and so forth. Now I want to show y'all something. I know Special Ed is not a Black American, but you know, I respect anybody who tells the truth. And I respect Special Ed. You know, I used to bump I Got It Made. That was one of the best rap songs ever. But listen to this. Listen to what he says here.
NWA brought the age of destruction. Damn. Jesus. NWA brought the age of destruction to our children and our culture.
Wow.
Period. Hey, I respect all of them as men, but as the art form, and you want me to speak on the art form, I'm gonna tell you what it is. That's
right. That's right. It's not personal. It's not a personal jab at NWA or Ice Cube or nothing like that. That's just what it is. They brought the destruction. Now, I can bear witness to this. I was around before NWA came out. And I remember when NWA came out. The majority of the attention that NWA got was because of how demonic they were, how controversial they were. People wanted to hear it just because it was so wicked. You see? So it was driven sort of by controversy at first. But do y'all know what the name of the group was before it was NWA? Listen to this. Well, check this out. Look at this. Ice Cube's first rap group was called CIA, which stood for Crew in Action. This is a lie. Right here, where it says Crew in Action, it stood for Criminals in Action. And remember, this was around the time when they were building prisons all across the country. For who? For us. How ironic. His first rap group called CIA, huh? Listen to this.
Wondering about your first group here, the CIA. This is your first group.
Yeah, this is my first group.
And this was before NWA. What was the CIA like, and what happened to the rest of the guys?
Oh, these criminals in action. That's what CIA stood for.
Boom. But do you see how the AI overview lied? You got it right from the horse's mouth. Cube said it stood for criminals in action, not crew in action. See, they want to give you some misinformation when you do your little Google search. Listen to this.
Rap music.
Okay.
Same people who own the labels own the prisons.
Literally the same people?
Literally the same people who own the labels own private prisons. The records that come out really geared to push people towards that prison industry.
But they didn't make you write those lyrics.
It's not about making somebody write the lyrics. It's about being there as guardrails to make sure certain songs make it through and certain songs don't. You know.
Now let me stop here and say to the people who would object and say, hey, Ice Cube is a Freemason and, you know, he's a part of the conspiracy. Well, you know, another thing that Freemasons known for, they known for putting the truth right in your face. The best way to hide the truth is to put it right there out in the open.
There as guardrails to make sure certain songs make it through and certain songs don't. You know, some social engineering going on here to make sure those prisons stay full.
Do they actually, like, Monday, Tuesday go to work as a record company executive and Wednesday through Friday go to work at the prisons? No.
Okay,
so if
of course they're not actually running the labels.
They have
those
financial interest.
Rap music.
Okay, now look, you all can believe that or not. Listen to this.
The Justice Department announcing charges in a major gun trafficking case involving a Chicago street gang.
Today we are announcing a superseding indictment charging 12 individuals in a conspiracy to illegally traffic over 90 guns across state lines into the city of Chicago.
NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams here now. Pete, that newly unsealed superseding indictment alleges that U.S. Army soldiers based in Kentucky conspired to funnel guns to the gangster disciples in Chicago. Tell us more about this case.
Right. So the story does begin a year ago with a shooting in Chicago that killed one person and wounded 7 others. And the police were able to pick up shell casings from the rounds that were fired by the guns and then turn them over to ATF for tracing. ATF has a system that examines the minute markings that guns leave on the bullet casings when the firing pin strikes the casing and when it's ejected from the gun. That leaves a sort of ballistic fingerprint. And that check revealed that 5 of the guns used in that shooting in Chicago were bought in the Clarksville, Tennessee area by 3 enlisted soldiers at Fort Campbell on the Kentucky-Tennessee border. Those 3 soldiers were charged last year with illegally buying weapons because federal law doesn't let somebody buy a gun for somebody else. That's called a straw purchase. So what's new here is that now the government has also indicted the men who it says were the ultimate buyers of the guns. 9 members of the gangster disciple street gang in the Pockettown neighborhood of Chicago. The indictment says the gang members would contact the soldiers and in essence place orders for the guns. Federal prosecutors say the soldiers actually sold more than 90 guns to those gang members. ATF says there's been a big increase in illegal firearms trafficking in the past few years, and it's...
Okay, those 90 guns, that was just one transaction. It wasn't 90 guns sold to gang members in all. That's just one out of many transactions between and that's just one gang. That's just the gangster disciples. All of these gangs had these military style guns, all of them, and still got them. So what's going on here? This was the system fueling the demons that were already in the people. You gotta remember, I made a whole channel about this. Black women's rejection of themselves their desire to base their culture on, and their grooming habits, which is their culture, based on white beauty standards and genetics, DNA, that's another way of attacking themselves. And in a sense, that's another way of gunning down other black people. It's a form of anti-black hatred. So it's a form of hatred for black people. And in this case, you know, a hatred for being black. You know, I hate how I look. I love how white people look and other people look. So I'm going to destroy how I look. I'm going to conceal it. I'm going to mask it. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to hide it. And I'm going to do whatever I got to do to get what those people have. Even if it means taking their entire head of hair and putting it on my head. Same with the, you know, the dyeing it blonde and the green contacts, so on and so forth. It's an expression of hatred. You know, when you hate something, you know, the ultimate way to find out if somebody hates something or someone is whether or not they try to destroy them. There's no confusion. If you're trying to unalive somebody, you obviously don't love them. That's a form of hatred. Like, you know, if you hate something, you know, you break it, you throw it away, you sell it, you get rid of it. You don't want it no more. You want something else. So when you're doing that to your own physical body, that's like you're using your body as a voodoo doll. You're carrying out a hate-based attack on your own body. And remember, your body is connected to your mind and your soul. It's one. And when you reject how you are and how you look, that is purely an energy, purely. And it's a demon. So, you already have a demon in place. But it's primarily in the women. That's why black men tried to get them away from that. You know? They're like, man, this is like witchcraft. It is, literally. It's a form of witchcraft. And this is pretty much how I look at, you know, these gangs, like these different sets and gangs. They're involved in witchcraft and they're possessed by demons. That's what it is. The mothers are already infused with this demon, and remember, it was reinforced in the women sexually, on top of, you know, like pure trauma and fear. Black men really didn't fear white men like that. When you can trigger fear, you're far more likely to change the spirit of that people or individual if you can put them in fear. And that's why the slave experience was a different experience for the females. And as a result, they were much more in line with the demon. And it was far more difficult for them to exorcise the demon out of them. because it was instilled in them in a different way than the males. We've pretty much always been rebellious.
Says that is fueling a spike in violent crime nationwide, Allison.
Pete, we're talking about gun trafficking charges. What kind of jail time, what kind of penalties do those charges come with?
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that. Y'all need to be talking about why and how are hot, because you got to understand, somebody is going to wonder where those guns went. Like if this was done by a low-ranking military officer, those above them would be like, where our guns go? Something like this could only be done through the involvement of high-ranking military personnel, the highest ranking military personnel. Look at this.
The gun switch that is turning pistols into machine guns is also causing a different kind of switch, according to law enforcement. A switch in the firepower that criminals have versus cops. When police are outgunned, the public can pay the price. This is a semi-automatic pistol, one shot per trigger pull, and legal in Illinois. This is a fully automatic pistol, non-stop rapid-fire bullets as long as the trigger is pulled. A machine gun created with the installation of this metal switch, dangerous in criminal hands and
Some of you heard of a switch, right? Well, there you go. Remember what I mentioned? That they have these military weapons where they can fire off multiple rounds in a very short period of time? There you go.
totally illegal for almost everyone.
It's very dangerous.
You hear that? They're illegal. Look at this extended clip. Look at that. You see, when you got a switch, you need an extended clip, because you're going to run out of ammunition real fast.
And totally illegal for almost everyone.
It's very dangerous and scary. Those automatic weapons could potentially take us out.
Consider this chase following an attempted traffic stop just last month in Aurora. From the suspect's backpack, officers pull out what they say is an illegal gun altered to fire full auto.
Well, you ran from the...
See that? Look at that. So you get the point. That's how I see it. The violence in these gangs, you know, among black Americans, I view as the result of them being demonically possessed, like literally. And, you know, don't think too much of that. All that means is that they reinforce a very negative energy. They carry very negative energy that they're always at odds with. They're always aware of it. And, you know, they try to fight it out of themselves every now and then. They're not always in demon mode like you would think. And listen to what these young men say. Listen to what they've evolved to call themselves. They call themselves demons now. I mean, just look at the world you're living in. I mean, is that just a coincidence? They're calling each other demons. They call themselves demons. And it's like a badge of honor to be considered a demon. Don't mess with him, he a demon. That's their lingo right now. Think about that. You think they plan? You think it's just a figure of speech? Or do you think they know exactly what they're talking? They know what they're talking about. They know a demon. They know what demonic activity and behavior is. They recognize that they're possessed by demons themselves. Even if they don't get bodies, they reinforce the ones who catch bodies. Really, every time they cut on the music, every time they do a gang handshake and all that. Because all that drill music is, you know, blowing nigga brains out and all this kind of stuff. And it all started with NWA. Now, how many of you, I know some of you, have heard of FBG Duck? He was a big gangster disciple in Chicago. He was taken out in 2020. He was a giant man. He actually could have played professional basketball if he would have stuck with it, because he was playing ball. You know, everybody used to play ball. And from what I hear, back when he was skinny, he was real good at basketball. But he, in 2020, he made a video called Dead B. And B is B-I-T-C-H-E-S. And those B-I-T-C-H-E-S's were dead people. With drill, their thing is to disrespect and diss the dead. That is witchcraft. That is like, it's a form of Satanism. It's a way of tampering with the spirit realm, where you're sending negative energy to the dead, to the spirit realm. This was what many believe to be the song that got FBG Duck taken out of here. And there's one part on here I can't play for you. But this song it's a dark and demonic song.
And okay, I did it. But nigga, fuck T-Roy and OD, them dead bitches.
T-Roy and OD. T-Roy was unalived in 2017. O.D. Perry unalived in 2011, I think. And both O.D. and T-Roy is said to have multiple bodies themselves.
Yeah, I heard about J Money. Yeah, niggas getting dead the same way.
That was another one. Another one of his ops who had been unalived, named J Money. Now this next one I can't show.
Bitch, don't play with gang. You don't want Lil Bro in your gang way. I know you heard about Lil Boo, yeah. They love you shit.
They showed a photo of Lil Boo, of him laid out on the ground. That's why I didn't show it. I mean, of his literal, unedited, dead body laid on the ground. Now, it wasn't in the actual video. They're just trying to show everyone, every person, that FBG Duck dissed in this song.
Bullets was hitting him, he was singing like Mariah. Yeah, you heard about Shariah. I know that hurt the heart. He probably walking, listening to his iPod.
He was probably walking, listening to his iPod. So you see, they're just mocking these people who have been killed. Just mocking them. And if I'm not mistaken, Sheroy, the guy he just mentioned, he didn't have no bodies. He wasn't a killer. You know, from what I understand, he wasn't really on nothing. But he was taken out anyway because he was associated with his ops.
Yeah, you heard about Lusty. Yeah, I heard about that too. But fuck him though, he a pack too.
Then, you know, he's calling the dead the B word. This is over the top demonic. Over the top, like evil. Is it not? But with that in mind, about a year prior, he made a video or song called Chicago Legends, where he gives props and speaks highly of his ops. In the song that you just heard that was made in 2020, a year after this song, he was dissing the dead, his dead ops, in the worst way imaginable. But a year earlier, he did what really nobody else did. He did what no other drill rapper did. Showed respect to his ops.
Y'all, just some real shit. Then again, we ain't gotta be friends, we ain't gotta hang together, we don't fuck all that shit. First off, I wanna tell y'all I'm a home man. You don't understand that you didn't become a grown man. Then again, we ain't gotta be friends, we ain't gotta hang together, we don't gotta hold hands. But real niggas, they gon' respect it. Hold on, get this shit a second. I know I ain't the only nigga, notice we lost a lot of Chicago legends.
Yeah, so you get the picture. We lost a lot of Chicago legends. He mentions the legends from his own set first, and then he moves on to mention what he calls legends, and they're his ops. This guy Newski was one of his ops. He was going back and forth with Newski on Twitter, and if I remember right, Newski was at a mall or something. I think at a meet and greet or something like that. And they was woofing back and forth, and Duck told him to stay there. He was coming up there to the mall, and Newski took off. The tweets are still available. You can read them yourself. Newski got up out of there. You go, Duck on his way out here. And then when Duck got to the mall, they started tweeting each other. Duck was like, "Why you leave? I told you I was coming out here." And Newski up, threatening to shoot up his house and all this kind of stuff. And then Newski ends up getting taken out, unalived, at a shoe store. And he was with Lil Durk at the time. He mentioned Fredo Santana, another one of his ops. Understand, this had never been done. The thing was to be gangster, not to show props to your ops. You're supposed to unalive your ops. They're your opposition. So when he dropped this, he got some pushback from his own guys. Like, "Hey man, you getting soft on us. Hey man, what you doing? You trying to exercise that demon out of you? What, you lost your demon? What happened, bro? What happened, bro? You got soft on us." And then I think the next year he dropped that demonic song Deadbeat. Gave in to the pressure. His guys saw that he was trying to exorcise his demon out. And they like, "No, don't do that." I mean, for someone to make a video or a song as evil and demonic as Deadbeat, would you expect him to also be talking like this?
Babies, cause y'all wanna catch a nigga that y'all think. because y'all want to catch a nigga that y'all think y'all in tour with, or however the motherfucking situation might go. You feel me? Look, I got 4 kids. You see what I'm saying? I got 3 boys, 1 girl. You know what I'm saying? If I catch a nigga with his daughter, I'm gonna give him a pass. That's just the heart of me, because I don't want no nigga to catch me when one of my kids and try to take me in front of my kids. You see what I'm saying? So I get a nigga a pass like that, but you silly ass niggas need to stop getting these guns, doing all this extra shit that y'all doing. You know what I'm saying? Because y'all ain't doing it right. Y'all not even hitting y'all target. You know what I'm saying? It's already that y'all, it's fucked up that we out here killing each other as black people. You know what I'm saying? We should be sticking together, but they want to gang bang forever, don't want to do nothing with their life.
Huh? What you talking about, Duck?
Far
What? What you talking about? This is a head scratch. This to me looks like he's aware of his demons. And as he got older, as he got more money, he started to turn against that lifestyle. So, like I said, I believe that they're aware of the demons that they got inside of them. And every now and then, you'll see them trying to exorcise those demons out of themselves. And I feel like it showed like in an overt way with Duck, with the Chicago legends, and with videos like this, where he's talking like this. You wouldn't expect somebody who would make such a disrespectful and demonic song like that to be talking like this. It's, you know, it's like a sort of a contradiction. It's like, oh, what are you talking about, bro? You talking
all you
unity?
silly ass niggas that's killing all these innocent babies because y'all want to catch a nigga that y'all think y'all in tour with.
Right? So, yeah. Now, if you do your own search, you can find a lot of information on, you know, the trafficking of these guns to different Chicago gangs and organizations. They're hauling these military grade weapons up there to fuel the demons that they know that are inside of these boys, because they put them in there. They instilled the hate, the self-hate into their mothers, were actually both black men and black women. Both black men and black women at first were, you know, mutilating themselves, their outer selves. Black men stopped doing it. Black men stopped trying to avoid looking black. Black men stopped running away from how they naturally look, their natural aesthetics. And they started to lean into it and accept and embrace and actually flaunt their outer selves. And what black women never understood, that leads to a transformation of your inner self. That's why you hear, you know, it's like always black men who are like this, like Duck, getting rah-rah 1 minute, then the next minute talking about unity and love and camaraderie, and then it's back to the rah-rah. You can tell that they know full well that what they're into is wrong. And I believe they're possessed by demons. We're dealing with demonic possession when you talk about these gangs, in my opinion. And it's been a long psyop. A psyop that started in a more primitive way, a more direct way during slavery. Back then, you know, they didn't have TV, the sophistication of music, the ability to manipulate what rappers and musicians talk about. Remember, when it came to this artificial rap genre, gangster rap, which gave birth to drill rap, all they do is glorify the unaliving of other black people. That's it. Over and over, in different ways. Glorify the unaliving of other black men. Black men. Let me not say black people. Because when you're talking about gangster rap or drill, you don't really hear them talking about gunning down females. It's really a black male thing. And they brainwash themselves with these lyrics, and what it does is it fuels the demons that they have inside of them. Many of them, when they go on hits, when they go out looking for their ops, they got that music playing. Many of you've seen them in traffic, right? Don't they have that drill music blasting? You know why? Because it's fueling them. It's energizing them. They're feeding off that energy. Blow a nigga brains out, yeah. It's helping to get them psyched up to carry out the evil. Just like slave masters had to get psyched up first, get in the mindset first to carry out this evil. And I personally believe that drill was also like the creation and popularizing of it, that the system took part in that. In fact, I know for a fact the system did, just based on the fact that they allowed it on YouTube the way that they did. That's the primary place where it thrived, talking about drill music, especially in its early days. The drill that you hear from that's made it to mainstream, there's far more drill songs that's just on YouTube. Far more. So there was a huge supporter of it. Okay, and remember, like I said before, this y'all can find this. This is on Wikipedia, and this is a list of list of U.S. cities with large black populations is the title. You scroll down here, and you go to this section right here, black population, and you can see that Chicago is at the top of the list. It's got the second largest black population in the United States. Number one is New York City with 1.9, over 1.9 million. But New York City got a lot more immigrants, a lot more non-FBAs in New York City than Chicago. And with Chicago having more different types of gangs, it's the perfect city to carry out this sort of psyop. It's the perfect city to fuel conflict because there are more divisions already in place. You got to remember, not only were divisions present in the form of gangs, like organizations, vice lords, GDs, and whatnot, they created even more divisions by creating different sets. And even in these different sets, you'll find subsets. For example, Jaro City was a set, but a subset of that is Taekwon World. And you'll find a lot of them who will say, I'm insane GD, insane BD. You got a whole Mickey Cobra and all this stuff. You got a whole slew of different organizations and sets and groups in Chicago. It's the perfect place to carry out a psyop, and that is nothing but a psychological operation. Look up psyops, a psychological operation. And that's why I always say, black Americans are really the only people having this done. This is a unique, experience. And you would think that this definitely has to be the most violent group in the world, but yet one of the least violent, has some of the lowest homicide rates. So imagine if none of this were in place, if none of this took place. That's why I don't listen to people who try to, project us as naturally criminal and nonsense, because these other places have much more crime, homicides, and yet they didn't go through none of this. And they didn't have and don't have their governments carrying out these types of operations on the demographic. And remember, COINTELPRO is another version. It's just a different type of Psyop, primarily surveillance, but it includes a lot more than that. And we know about COINTELPRO. The people who rule this country have always treated Black Americans as an enemy group, an enemy population that they want to die off, preferably in what would seem to be a natural way. Preferably have them kill each other off. Make their extinction look self-inflicted. And I feel like I see the game for exactly what it is. Each of us individually have a responsibility to try to fight against it. But most, or a good portion of them, they won't make it. They're not going to be able to. The demon's going to take them. They're going to take them out of here. And when you're talking about Chicago, man, like I said, especially the drill scene, so many of these guys are no longer here. It ain't funny. It really is crazy. Going through the photos and seeing how many of them are no longer. And this was just in 2012. Wasn't that long ago. Yet this guy is no longer with us. This guy, no longer with us. Several of them. Like I said, in some pictures, you'll find where all of them are gone. All of them. So yeah, Black Americans are fighting demons. When you hear these youngsters talk about how they're a demon and call their comrades demons, do not take that lightly. They know what they're talking about. They're telling you what's wrong with them. That's the eerie part of it. You can actually make a movie out of this. And understand, they start catching bodies at like 12, 13, 14 years old when they're still kids. You telling me they're not possessed? I don't blame kids for nothing. I don't blame them for nothing. Kids are what we make them. They are what their parents and the environment have shaped them to be. And I just can't sit and say, oh, you just a degenerate at 12 years old. No, something is behind this behavior. And they are not dumb. They're sitting here telling you what the problem is. We are possessed by demons. Yes, you straight up are. Right. And I need to make a whole different stream about that. How Keisha supports this demonic culture. Black women have gotten so many of these gangsters killed, it ain't funny. You could probably argue that the majority of the unalivings and the fights were over females. I've heard several of them say it. And these females are well known for backdooring these gangsters, for setting them up. They are just as much in the mix of this evil madness as the men are. Remember, they are the mothers of these boys. And the majority of them are raised by single mothers. You remember, Duck's mom, she's basically a thug gangster herself. Raised them on Lil Wayne and all this kind of stuff. They're gang members. Like I said, these females are part of these organizations as well. And if they're not, they're just as much part of it. You see them in their videos and all that kind of stuff, throwing up gang signs and whatnot. That's a huge problem because they're the mothers. Mothers have a whole different type of influence. When the mother put a stamp of approval on a lifestyle, it's almost impossible to snap out of it. So you can see how the mothers are using their maternal instincts to ruin them. You see how they pat them on the back when they've been to prison and they love prisoners and it's looked at as a badge of honor. Much of that comes from the women. When the guys come out of prison, they get first dibs on many of these chicks. So a lot of people I know, and especially a lot of black women, they look at black women as, oh, they're the innocent group. Don't even try it. Especially seeing that the majority of them raised by single mothers, and mothers have an extremely powerful role. I made a whole video about that. Everybody, both males and females, are groomed and conditioned by our mothers first. A pregnant woman who embraces negative energy is going to pass that right on to her offspring. And really, they have more influence on our behavior and our overall energy, our mothers, than I'm able to articulate and even wrap my head around. So yeah, my opinion, what's yours? I'll leave it there.